Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of Talking Over today. My very special guest is my own president, Holly Graham. Holly, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Sean. It's always a pleasure.
So, what I like to start my show with is I ask all my guests what got you into Toastmasters. So, take us back to the very beginning and what let you walk through that door the very first time.
Yeah, so Toastmasters, I'd always heard about it. I actually heard about it in college, but between all my studies and all my other extracurriculars, I never really got a chance to really participate in it. And then when I got my first job out of college, I was doing a presentation in front of a couple of the senior directors, and I had a director that told me, "Hey, have you ever considered taking Toastmasters? You have a pretty good presence out there, but you really could enhance those types of skills." And I was like, you know what? That's the second time I've heard about it. Well, I didn't get a chance to find a club that was near me at that time. I was working in a remote location. And so when I moved to Dallas and came to L3, I heard about the flyer and I was like, this third time's the charm. I have to attend Toastmasters. And so it was kind of a long journey, but I finally made it here and have now been in Toastmasters for about 3 years now. So it's all gone by so quickly.
All three of those are with Awesome Articulators?
Yes, all of them.
That's cool. There's a lot of attrition in a corporate club, huh? You've seen some people come and go?
Yeah, I have. Part of being a corporate club is people have their careers first, and Toastmasters is kind of there to help you develop those skills. And once you get those skills, you usually find bigger and better opportunities. And sometimes that just comes with being part of a corporate club, that attrition rate.
One of the things I like best about us being a closed corporate club is it puts me in contact with so many people from around our large workspace and now the whole state wide because of Zoom that I otherwise wouldn't have met. But it's like such fantastic networking in our own corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And I've since branched out, as you know, and went to several other clubs via Zoom around town and around the world. And it's just everyone I go to, I just enjoy thoroughly.
Yeah, Zoom's been an incredible asset to Toastmaster community. Of course, you don't get that person feel, that in-person um, at audience feel or having that camaraderie, but Zoom gives you a really close opportunity to still maintain that and then even branch out even further. So this has been a really great challenge for our club, but for Toastmasters in general, to try to reach out to more of those places that maybe were a little bit inaccessible due to location.
So when COVID made us first go to our online meetings, I had a lot of nerves because I was just finally getting comfortable speaking in front of people. And then I had to do it all in this brand new environment where I'm just essentially alone in my room talking to a red light on the top of my computer screen. So what was going through your head the first time you had to give a speech to a webcam as opposed to an audience?
Oh man, there are several things, right? Especially being in an in-person club, you get to utilize your body a little bit more in terms of gestures, and you get to walk around the room and really play off the audience and where they're located. Well, when you come to a webcam, you have to stare at a lens and then try to make your emotions higher and do more techniques with like your vocal variety. And so you're really hitting on those different skills that normally you might be able to pass with making large, big gestures or making that physical presence on the stage. So the first time I had to give a speech, that was the challenge was how do I create that audience engagement with the eye contact? How can I look at every single person when I can only look at my camera? So you don't have that physical connection. And that was really interesting to overcome. But of course, with everything becoming virtual, it's definitely a skill that we need to have in this day and age. And so that was kind of my first experience was how do I connect with the audience when I cannot physically step around them or use body language or use that physical eye contact.
I totally agree with you. My presentation style is very physical, like a lot of hand gestures, a lot of voice inflection. But the more I watch people give speeches online in the various contests and things, your voice and your tone inflection is limited by the volume setting of my speakers, you know? So
Hmm.
if my speakers are low, you're not going to draw me in by raising your voice or lowering your voice. I mean, chances are if you lower your voice, I just won't hear you, because
Hmm.
maybe my speakers are so low. So another thing is trying to use my whole square. Or if I use my hands and I bring them close, now it just looks like I'm tiny head. So these are just some of the variances I'm dealing with. And as I'm moving towards contest season, I don't know if I'm going to even try to use any of my normal tactics. I guess I'll just rely heavily on facial expressions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just overcome and adapt, right?
Yeah, I assume I'll get extremely used to it, and then we'll go back to being in person.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just went to Yosemite, right?
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone. Sorry. What's the best part about Yellowstone?
Oh my goodness, there are so many best things about Yellowstone. But I think perhaps the thing that I was most inspired or impressed by was just the natural scenery out there. I mean, coming to Texas, you've got, varied landscapes. You've got the Gulf, the beach, and then you've got the hill country and you got the plains, but you don't really have like the mountains and the forests, right next to canyons and then right next to valleys and then it's covered in you have still snow-topped mountains in September. I mean, that is just ridiculous. And so just being in there and having a 2-hour journey of going through the park, seeing all these varied landscapes, even the waterfalls, the wildlife. I think that was just my favorite part of it because if I wanted to experience that in Texas, I'd be going for a whole day's drive to get to, West Texas and to Big Bend, and then I'd have to drive 6 hours or more to the Gulf, and then I'd have to go all the way to the east side to see some forests. So it's really all right there, compact, and I think that's the most beautiful part about Yellowstone.
So right when you got back from that, you turned that into like an awesome presentation for a Pathways project. Did you go there knowing you were going to have inspiration to do a project, or did you just get there and say I could do a project about this, or how'd that come to be?
It's a little bit of both. I think spending a lot of time at Toastmasters, you're constantly looking for your next speech or your next inspiration. And so I think when I went on this journey to Yellowstone, the whole 20-hour drive up there, I'm like, man, what could I find on the journey that'd be a really great presentation? The topic that I chose, which was the land management and how the parks are managed in the United States, was really a topic I didn't expect to really come across. And so that was a really nice surprise. And I really got that a lot from just the local guides, from the National Park Service, the rangers. And so really that inspiration can be anywhere that you want to be.
Well, that's really cool how you were able to take a real world situation and apply that to a project. That's one thing I didn't think about. I guess the longer I'm in, the more I'll always have an eye out for things I can present. Because sometimes when I'm going through my project list, I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like for my next project, it's a humorous speech, and it kind of ties in perfect with the contest. But I don't think I want to do them both at the same time because I don't even know if I'm any good at it yet. So I'm just going to do the contest and see what happens. Assume I'm going to fail and then go right into my pathways again.
Oh, goodness.
Have you ever done any contests?
I have. I have done two contests. One, I've done the international speech contest, and then I did a humorous speech contest. And those were both quite interesting. I personally don't think I'm a very funny person. And so when I came to coming up with like a humorous story, I'm always thinking, oh, maybe I can put a pun here or, short little one-liner here or try to tie it all in. And sometimes I just get way over my head. And then my husband's just always encouraging me. He's like, you're just funny the way you are. You don't need to put a little zinger in there. And sometimes I don't know if that is a good compliment or not, that I'm just naturally funny. But it worked out. And so they're both really good opportunities and experiences, that's for sure.
Do you mind me asking how far your humor speech journey was?
Oh, mine ended at the area level. And we had some really great speakers. I believe I came in second for that.
Mm.
But again, it was really awesome. It's pretty interesting, especially when you get all the clubs all around. You get to see everybody's form of humor, and you might want to take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and create your own. And it's a really neat way to see um, all the different varieties of humor, all the different speakers in your area. So I highly encourage it for sure.
Well, I'm all in at this point, so it all depends on who steps up at the club level if I can make it to the next one or not.
Yeah.
So how was that different from the international contest? Is it just a further journey, or is there different steps?
So the International Speech Contest is the one speech competition that goes to an international stage. So your humorist will pretty much end at a district level, but the humor speech goes on much further into where you're having competitions with other global competitors. And so that's really the main difference. They're still the same amount of time, 5 to 7 minutes. Um, your humorous speech is more engaged on humor, whereas international can be humorous, but it is mostly a speech that can be humorous, informative, inspirational, any of the like. So I would say that those are most mainly the differences in the two.
Okay, that's cool. Just along for the ride, I guess. So you talked about being able to meet people from other clubs when you were going through your contest, right? And bridging those gaps that you otherwise wouldn't have bridged. Now through the Zoom age, we found a way to do that through inter-club game nights. So in your own
Yeah.
opinion, how bad is Awesome Articulators going to beat Link Toastmasters in our first ever Pictionary night?
Oh man, you're gonna start the trash talking already. Well, I think we've got a good chance. That's for sure. We have experience on our ends in terms of how many people have come to already trivia nights and other game nights. So I think we really have that competitive edge of already knowing how to play the game, play the landscape. Um, but I mean, we haven't really interacted with them very much. We've just started that collaboration through you. Um, so they're kind of that underdog. We don't know yet their tactics. We don't know their experience. So it could really be a fair fight in who becomes the next game night champion.
Yeah, Marianne might be recruiting graphic designers as we speak, so maybe we should lay off just in case.
Yeah.
So you've been around long enough that you were pre-Pathways, right?
Yes, I am.
And what are your two abbreviation award? You have a CC, is that correct?
Yes, I have a CC.
Can you explain
Uh,
that?
yeah, sure. The CC is your competent communicator. Pre-Pathways, you had a manual or had about 10 speeches, I believe, and each one focused on a particular aspect of a speech. Maybe one was dedicated mostly to vocal variety, maybe another one was focused more towards gestures and postures. So it had the ability to really hone in on a particular skill. And that was a really neat way that we did it. That was also supposed to have a companion, CL, which is your competent leadership, which helped you get a lot more experience in undertaking meeting roles, um, taking on opportunities to chair open houses, and really be able to execute leadership skills in the club and outside of the club. I think I was maybe one short of completing my CL, so that was a little missed opportunity there. But Pathways is really great in the sense that you're now able to bring those two skills together instead of having two separate manuals. So it's a lot more integrated. You have your um, your leadership aspect, and then you have your speech technique that you're working on. And the fact that they are so integral together, I think, is a really flawless way of being able to perfect two skills at a time, especially since they go hand in hand. So, yep.
That's pretty cool because when I hear about it and someone tells me there was a book with 10 speeches, to me that sounds super short. And only because I'm so familiar, well, as familiar as I can be with Pathways, I'm I can realize how in depth it is with the different levels and the different projects at each level. And each level tends to get more and more specific to your pathway. So I couldn't wrap my head around how a 10 speech book was just as effective.
Yeah, well, I mean, that gets you your, I believe at that time that got you your basic level. And so you're really going to hit 10 speeches at around level 2 in pathways. But then once you get that, you, in the old traditional way, you would have your advanced communicator series and your advanced leadership series of projects where you would focus more on specific paths, actually. I think I had one which was technical presentations, and I had another one that was engaging humor in a way. So you would have to complete 2 of those books, which they themselves have a certain number of speeches. So it really kind of equates itself. It's just that now it's more integrated instead of having to complete 3 different manuals all at once.
I bet it makes it easier on the VP of Education too to keep track of everybody.
It definitely does.
So you have been VP of E yourself, and you were also VP of PR.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite position?
Including the president, or?
Of course. Don't let the power go to your head, though. You know, I mean, any of them can be great.
Oh man. So I'm just now stepping into president, so feeling it all out, so getting acquainted with the different responsibilities of president. But I had the most experience in VP of Ed, and I really did enjoy it. Mostly it's just getting to be intimate with the member, of knowing where their speeches are, what do they need to get to that next level, helping them succeed, getting that mentor established for them. So I really liked that aspect of it. I felt like I got to know the club members a little bit more and what they needed to help them get to their goal, which if that was getting CC or getting CL, or if that's getting to level 3 in the next 6 months. I really did enjoy that aspect. VP of PR was really great too, but man, you are blowing me out of the water. Anything that I ever did as VP PR, so I think this is definitely your realm, and you've elevated the club to a whole nother level.
Oh, I
So
definitely
I won't even talk about my time as VP of PR.
Well, I mean, it's just all the opportunity that the COVID brought upon it. It was, in a way, it was terrible, but in a way, it really benefited because I've talked to more people than I would have in our closed club, you know, without the internet usage. But now
Yeah.
I'm like jumping into clubs left and right, and I can see what's working for these people. I can see what's working for this group, and I can try to bring some of those back. Now, it's not all great. Don't get me wrong. There's some things that I'll never bring to the club, but I can cherry pick the things I like and just bring them back. Like the finger snaps thing. I don't remember where I saw that, but I like it.
So you're behind it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you were on that vacation.
Yeah. Came back and I was like, all right, this is what we're doing.
Yes, the jazz.
That's pretty cool. I like it.
I guess it kind of shows that everybody's listening as well. I think that was a club out of Lexington. I visited that they were doing it.
Okay.
So, Lexington's in Kentucky. I know you have trouble with Kentucky after our trivia experiences, but we don't have to get into that on here. That is a state.
Apparently, it's not as far east as I thought it was.
Geography's tough. Don't sell yourself short.
Oh my goodness, I can tell you that. When driving up to Yellowstone, I was like, wait, these states all interact? Wait, Yellowstone is in 3 states? Yeah.
Oh, you went to Oklahoma State?
I did.
Not a lot of geography classes or maps there, huh?
Well, you see it on a map and you're like, oh, of course, I know the state shape and all of that. And then you're driving through it and you're like, my goodness, there is literally nothing out here, but yet it's so beautiful. How is there nobody out here? So
I bet the Dakotas are like that. I've never met anybody from South Dakota, but I'm sure there's people there. Maybe I should try to visit a Toastmasters club.
Maybe.
They'll just tell me I talk funny. That's how the club in Germany was. They're like, you have an accent. I'm like, I don't think so. You guys got accents. That was really great. It's just hard to find one that coincides with my time slot availability, you know?
Yeah.
It's like it's got to be on Wednesdays. And then you got the whole, I want to go to a club from Australia, but they're so far ahead that it'd have to be super late at night here or super early in the morning.
Mhm.
And they're always a day ahead because of the dateline, you know?
That
So
would be pretty interesting though to have
it
them on
would. It would. I got to go to Australia when I was on deployment, and it's a really cool place with a lot of cool people.
my bucket list.
You should go. Don't enlist in the Navy just to go
Oh,
see it
okay.
because there's a lot of stuff you got to put up with to get there. Maybe
Gotcha.
fly there
Pro tip. Got it.
from my own experience. So, what would you say some of your inspirations as you traveled through your pathway now and the books from before? Was there anybody or anything that inspired you to keep going and keep being successful so you don't burn out?
Yeah, absolutely. There are several people that have really been an inspiration and have been pretty much my cheerleader for going on. Um, First is my husband. I don't know how many times I have asked him, late at night, hey, what should my next speech topic be? And then he just yells out the first thing that comes to the top of his head. And I think one time he had said, why don't you talk about whales? And I was like, why whales? And he's like, oh, I just saw a commercial for a preview for, I think it was Dory, Finding Dory at the time. I was like, okay. So I was researching whales and then I got into Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. And then next thing I knew, I wrote a whole speech about how whales communicate and how it's actually not that far off in the movies on how they communicate. So I wrote a speech about that. So he's definitely been an inspiration um, to really give me those wacky ideas that I don't think I could otherwise come up with. And then secondly, I think another person that has really encouraged me just from starting off when I first got into Toastmasters was Monica Rose, who you've also had on your program here. And she's always been energetic and encouraging to, take that next step. And I think I've said this before in one of my other speeches or when we had the meeting with Monica that she convinced me to be a test speaker at a contest. And then little did I know that was going to be in a ballroom full of people at the District 50 contest. And so I don't think I would have done that if it wasn't for her. She's like, come on, you can do it. It'll be fine. It'll be perfect. You know, um, there won't be that many people there. All the different things to tell somebody to convince him to do something like that. And I have to say that was a pretty spectacular experience. I think that really got me hooked on the Toastmasters, really made me want to be part of the leadership team, really want to branch out and meet other people from different clubs, participate in contests. So I would have to say a lot of that I would credit to Monica. Just, I mean, Monica is just a really captivating person. She can really help bring out that inner Toastmaster in you and that drive for success. And um, so yeah, I would say those would be my top two people that have encouraged me.
Well, whenever you're speaking, that just made me think of something talking about that ballroom full of people. I know everybody gets anxiety, but sometimes my anxiety won't hit till like mid speech. And then I just wonder if I'm going to be able to make it through. How do your experiences with anxiety go? And then follow up, how do you deal with it? Mary Ann from Link Toastmasters tells me that everybody has butterflies before they speak or during a speak, but it's up to you
Mm-hmm.
to get those butterflies to fly in formation. Maybe you've heard that before. I thought it was a really cool saying. But how does Holly Graham approach anxiety?
I think so. In high school, I was pretty much a theater kid. I don't know if that really helps out with how I approach speeches and getting up on stage and talking to a bunch of people, but I still get those butterflies. My palms still get a little sweaty. The only difference now is that I just convince myself that I'll be okay. Uh, the people that are listening to me genuinely want to hear me speak. Um, Even if I were to completely fail at it, I will still get that round of applause at the end of my speech, which still helps me out. And then even when I'm going through my speech and maybe I've forgotten something and I have to take a moment to pause, people are still so attentive to you. And so it's just this fostering type of environment that I really appreciate. And I think that's what helps me, get those butterflies to fly in formation, because I know that once I get through it and I'm done, there's still going to be people that are going to give me a little pat on the back, because it's still a fear that many people have, and I still took the leap to go ahead and speak. So I think that's how I really do it. And in theater, whenever I would have to go up on stage, it's completely dark. It's kind of like you're in your own zone. You don't really get to see the audience very much, depending on what you're working on or what you're performing. But it's really just you, it's the stage, and then at the end, it's over, and there's still people that are championing you to keep on going and keep on trying. So that's how I do it. But I don't think I'll ever get rid of the sweaty palms or the racing heartbeats or the butterflies. But it's a good experience for me.
That's cool. I had no idea you were in drama. I was also in drama.
Yeah.
I had a huge role in Mrs. Thompson's 6th grade production of Beauty and the Beast.
That's pretty good.
I was tree number 2, just outside the castle wall. No speaking lines for me to mess up, but I did stand real still.
Hey, that's the important part. So what makes it believable, right?
Well, yeah, I didn't want to steal the show. So, aside from the speaking whales and the speech about your vacation, do you have like an all-time I really knocked that one out of the park moment from your speeches in Toastmasters? You ever left the stage and been like, everybody in this room is far better people for hearing what I just said, or anything close to that?
Oh man, that is a tough one. I am my toughest critic, where I'm always like, man, I missed that opportunity, or maybe that didn't come out so great. But I would probably have to say one of my favorite speeches I gave at the the I was the test speaker at the ballroom, and just the environment itself was memorable. But at that particular speech, I had a topic of um, it was around Thanksgiving, and it was about what I could be most thankful for, or how I could change my perspective in being thankful for Thanksgiving or in the holiday area. And what I liked the most about it, like, I didn't say anything that was completely novel or, mind blowing, anything like that. But afterwards, when I was done, my heart was starting to slow back down. I was starting to get cold from the sweaty palms. I had a lot of people come up to me and they're just like, I've never thought about being thankful in that type of way, which was, instead of saying, um, I'm thankful for my family. I think that year I had just gotten married, be like, hey, I'm very thankful to have new in-laws, a new set of family, new aunts and uncles and grandparents and all of that. Um, be very specific in it. Don't just say, oh, I'm thankful for having a house over my head or a roof over my head, but being more deliberate and saying, I'm thankful to have this home in this part of the state, which now I'm only 4 hours away from my family instead of being 10. So it makes those trips a little bit easier. But afterwards, having those people come by and they're like, I never really thought about it like that. It really brought that into perspective about how sometimes we can be overgeneralized and then it doesn't make it as special. But when you really break it down, then it can give you a little bit more appreciation for those little blessings in your life. And so that was perhaps the one where I was like, man, I think I did something right. Like, I think I finally communicated my message across, and people understood it and they weren't really confused by it. or kind of like, well, duh, So I would have to say that is definitely the one where I left and I was like, man, my purpose achieved. Sent that out. Um, long, long story, but that's the one that really stands out to me.
That's really cool. I'm still waiting to have one where I remember what happened, because usually I get so nervous and then I'll rush through it. Well, I'll talk until I see the lights from the timer, but I don't really remember anything that was said. I wish they were as good as when I record them before I give them, because I like to record to hear myself back. Like maybe I should give some inflection here or a little more animated when I tell this part of the story. And then when I go through the actual speech, it's just like, what were my 3 bullet points? Compliment, compliment. I'm out of here. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I get when I was younger, when I was in drama, I used to wear glasses. I had bad vision before I got LASIK, and my ways of coping with anxieties back then was to just take my glasses off because I couldn't see anything. So I did all right. So now with the Zoom camera, I'm kind of back to that. I just look at the camera and I don't look down, and hopefully people like what they hear. So I'm
No,
still waiting on my big I did it speech. But that's really
uh,
cool that you have one.
yeah. Well, I mean, all your speeches that I've heard have been fantastic. So,
Oh, go on. Any specifics? No, I'm just kidding.
well, I didn't know I'd be tested on it. So, let me get my notepad out. No, no, you have a phenomenal speaking voice, and it's very conversational and very humorous. And so, I think that's what the club is really engaged, and to see like, what is Sean gonna say now?
Awesome.
And, you're really creative with your phrases as well, and so I kind of envy that because, like I said, I don't think I'm very funny, but man, you just kind of throwing them out left and right and tying it all together in a big old bow, and we're belly laughing over here, which you can't hear us because we're on mute, but
I know it's so hard to do comedy to a blank wall
yeah.
because you need to hear the people laugh.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do have to say, there is one speech that I remember uh, that was not my best speech at all. And not to deter anybody, but it was definitely my icebreaker speech. I think I didn't realize how nervous I would get speaking in front of, my colleagues. I had just met them, for a few weeks before, and now I was going to give my all about me speech. And I thought, I'm not going to do it without notes. I don't need notes. It's all about
Oh,
me.
whoa,
Oh man, I tell you, I got humbled real fast. Uh,
rolling the dice.
I got into it. I started, I think I got a minute or two rolling, no big deal, and all of a sudden, blank, blank expression. And I looked down. Of course, I don't have my notes there because I don't need notes to talk about myself. And I think it was a good solid like 20 seconds, maybe, of just staring at people, like, please come back, trying to remember what I was supposed to say. And then I just rolled back into it. And so I think that one I definitely remembered, but it had taught me a lesson too, to always prepare your speech.
Mhm.
And even if you don't need notes, it's always good to have them in your back pocket sometimes.
Yes.
Uh, but yeah, that was definitely my first speech. And I mean, I had given countless speeches in college, and it was like, no big deal. This is fine. You know yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, I can't do that. I gotta write it out. And then
Yep.
I just keep rewriting and rewriting until I think that the material on the paper is so good that it won't matter how I deliver it. Because that's where I know the biggest fault's going to come is the sender of the message. The message is going to be great, but my ability to send it's going to waver at times. But yeah, my icebreaker was that barbecue smoking, guitar stroking, globetrotter with a son and a daughter bit. I, I wrote and rewrote that like 100 times just so that would be great. And I figured once I got past that great opening line, it would be smooth sailing from there. It wasn't, but it felt like in my head going in that it was going to be. And once I saw people's reaction from that positive opening line, it was smooth sailing.
Yeah, I mean that definitely was evident to us that you purposely wrote that line so it all rhymed and it would stick in our heads, and it was a perfect line. Yeah, it was pretty great. A lot better than my overconfidence, ego over here.
I'm Holly Graham.
is
You're gonna want to
that
write this down,
is
friends.
that 5 minutes? Uh, but I mean, of course, going through the program has taught me how to write a speech and how to memorize and gave me all those skills. So now that I doubt I'll ever get that 20-second blank look on my face, but
It was probably like 4 seconds, but it felt like a minute and a half. I've done
that's
that
true.
too.
It probably was only like 3 seconds, but to me, I was like, oh no.
How do you get yourself to be okay? So another thing, when I do give a speech that's so well written, that's so thought out and written out, that a lot of the times before I'm to what I consider the halfway point of my speech, halfway through my body or whatever, the timer's lights start coming on, and then in my head I'm like, oh my god, I'm not gonna make it. But I've seen you give speeches and you don't even blink. The red light will be on and you're just keeping your pace and you finish on time. But does that ever, like, do those lights, at least when you're starting out, ever mess with you?
Oh, for sure. Most of the time, they're always a surprise. Because sometimes I just get really into my speech and I give a lot more information than I think the audience really came for. And then I look over at the lights and I'm just like, oh, it's it's yellow. I'm only on point number one or point number two. And then I try to hustle, and usually those don't work out too well at the end. It comes with a very shaky conclusion. But uh, I think just the repetition, the practice, you get to see when you have the yellow light, all right, what does the next minute feel like? And when you see the red light, okay, what does 30 seconds feel like? And usually when you kind of gauge what that looks or what that sounds like and feels like with your own pace, I think is where you get more comfortable with seeing the red light and you're like, okay, 30 seconds. I can probably say two, three more sentences as long as they're not really long sentences and start wrapping up my conclusion. So I think that just comes with practice and with repetition. But there are still some times where I overrun my speech time and I was just really getting into my speech and didn't pay attention to that light until I looked over and it was red. And then be like, oh man, how long has it been red? I still have my conclusion to go to. So it sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But really, what I found is if you know your pace, then you can kind of gauge what 30 seconds, what a minute and a half look like when you're speaking.
What's the longest speech you've had to give?
Intentionally or unintentionally?
What was the longest speech you were aiming for?
Okay. The longest speech I've aimed for was about 10 minutes. I did that. It was actually at work. It wasn't even in Toastmasters. I was presenting a proposal, and I didn't realize that I would have my senior managers on the call with me, and so it was more of an impromptu 10-minute speech. Um, but I have had a lot longer speeches when I have accidentally run over my 5 to 7 minute speech, where I think one time it ended up being like 8, 9 minutes, something like that. And I was like,
Wow.
oh no.
Well,
Sorry, guys.
I don't know. Maybe I'll get comfortable eventually, but I think if I saw the red light and I feel like it went longer than 30 seconds or whatever it's supposed to be, I'd just be like, all right, I didn't pass. More to be continued.
Yeah, well, I think the last one where I ran over time, it was on Zoom, and so I was just getting into my presentation, into um, my speech, and I didn't quite pin the timer, which is always the pro move. You got to pin the timer so that you don't lose them with everybody moving around.
Explain
Um,
that. How do you pin somebody on Zoom? I really don't even know. And certainly that means nobody listening knows. So how do you do that?
I gotcha. So when you know who the timer is, you can just and you're in the gallery view, so where you can see everybody square.
Mm-hmm.
You can right click on that person's tile, and it'll say pin video. So no matter if whatever view you're looking at, that person's tile will stay in that position, so you won't lose it or it won't get lost. And sometimes that's really helpful if you've got really large Zoom calls, because if you're in a really large Zoom call, you know that the pinned person will always be near the front if you have it in gallery, or it'll be the pinned speaker if you're um, having it in any other view. For us in our club, uh, it really helps out because if I'm sharing content, then you don't the way Zoom is kind of set up, you don't get to see everybody all at once. They're kind of in either a really skinny view, or maybe they're not even on your screen because you're presenting content. So having that pinned person is still there and you can still see them instead of having to flip through all the different pages of participants. So that's always the pro move, and that's what got me last time. I didn't pin the timer, and so when I was trying to find where my color was, I couldn't, and then I went 9 minutes on accident.
Well, I mean, we always learn from our mistakes and get better moving forward, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm telling them all to you and everybody else here.
Mistakes.
Please do better than me when it comes to this. Pin your timer.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, before we cut off of here, football is coming back this weekend. What's your expectations for the Cowboys?
Oh man, are you talking about Oklahoma State?
I was talking about Dallas Cowboys, but we can go right into Pistol Pete. What do you think Pistol Pete's going to do this year?
Well, I didn't know if you were talking about Oklahoma State. So they were supposed to have a game this weekend on Saturday, but it has been postponed due to some positive cases. So that's a TBD until next week. So that's one more week for me for college football. But as far as Dallas, man, I never know. I think I'm always safe at 8-8, 500. I mean, history has been showing that we're about 500 at times. Sometimes we surprise ourselves and get a 10-win season. So we'll just see what it gets me.
That's kind of rough this year. It's because there's been no news. You know, election years are the worst because there's typically less news during those years. But this year with the COVID and everything, and I'm pretty sure they wanted to have hush-hush training camps so nobody saw if they were breaking violations or whatever. But there's the games are Sunday, and I have no pregame news as the Browns head into Baltimore.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed I didn't get involved in fantasy football this year. Usually that's breaking tradition.
Question. Do you usually play?
I do. I usually play and with a band of coworkers and colleagues at work. But now, I don't know anymore.
I wish I had known. I just had my draft last Sunday.
Well, next time. It's okay. I mean, I don't need to collect all your guys' money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of those things. Really, I'm doing you a favor.
I promise you, nobody took Dak Prescott, and that's probably your number one pick, right? All right. Well, your secrets are safe with me. Anyways, thanks for being on. And I look forward to seeing you the next time I see you, which I guess will be Tuesday. We haven't been in the same room since May, maybe even earlier than that.
I would say earlier than that because I think.
Oh yeah, because March Madness got canceled, so it was before that.
It was before March. It's been a while.
I can't believe we even work at the same place. What a time to be alive. But I'll see you later, Holly. Thank you.
All righty. Nice talking to you.